Hello everyone, and welcome back to another one of my wonderful Mythic Mobs tutorials. Today we're going to be covering two different mechanics that work very similarly to one another, and I think they're similar enough that I wanted to throw them both in the same tutorial. The mechanics we are covering today are going to be push and pull. Now, the differences may seem obvious, and well, to tell you the truth, they are. However, I think it's noteworthy the differences in them because, well, the way they're utilized will be tremendously different. And one thing I want to go ahead and throw out right now is that pull is not to be confused with force pull, which is the teleportation related one. Pull is just an entirely different one that literally pulls you, whereas force pull is a teleportation mechanic. There will be a little thing at the end of the video that links over to my last video covering this, if you decide to stick around that long anyway. So, if you haven't already, hop on over to my Discord channel. Link will be in the description below. Lots of good stuff going on over there. Lots of good people coming back into our realm of the lab. And then, you know, as always, there's always a ton of cool stuff being showcased and shared. So I highly recommend you check it out. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, first things first, you're going to need your mob file. So I already have one started here, push pull mob, because I'm going to be covering the two mechanics. Go ahead and go into it, and as you can see, it's once more all the same setup. So if you need to take a moment to copy all this down, please make sure to press pause right now and do so. Okay, let's carry on. So first thing we're going to do is cover the pull mechanic. In my opinion, it's a bit easier and yet more complicated at the same time, which is perfect for this tutorial, or at least for the way I like to teach things. The only two options we have in here are velocity and 2. Now, 2 doesn't play a huge role in things, however it can, and I will show you how shortly, but first let's go ahead and cover the basics of pull. So by default, the velocity is set to 1. That's very important to keep in mind because it's actually a very weak velocity. However, if you set it to 2, it's going to be much stronger. The value of velocity is very sensitive, and that's one thing I want you guys to keep in mind whenever you are making your skills. What we're going to do at PIR, players in radius, on timer, we're going to do it on a timer of 20. Now, pull is honestly much better on a timer than it is on like on damage or on interact. Also, we need to add a radius here. Let's do R equals 10. There we go. But as I was saying, it's much more reliable on a timer, or if you use it with some kind of other skills such as aura or projectile, as opposed to just doing like on interact. I'll just go ahead and show you why right now. So I'm going to copy this and just comment out one of them. We're going to switch on timer to on interact. Okay. We're going to reload, and we're going to spawn him in. Spawn push pull mob. Sorry for that chat spam. You can see I've been working around with it for a little while now. So if we interact with him right now, you can notice that we're moving ever so slowly. We're just being nudged forward, like not even a full pixel towards him. But one thing you might have noticed too, I don't know if you did or not, but notice how the farther away we are, the stronger that pull seems to be, despite the fact velocity is set to 1. Well, that's because velocity scales. I don't know what the scalar is, however, the farther away you are, the stronger the pull is going to be, regardless of what you set your velocity to. With that in mind, let's go ahead and comment that out and put our on timer one back in. Now if we reload, as you can see, we're getting pulled every second. It's not really doing a whole lot to us, but you know, if you want to make it even more threatening, switch it from every second to every 10th of a second by getting rid of that 0. Now if we reload, you can see it's much more fluent and we're just constantly being pulled in. It's not really too hard to get away from, but if you notice, the further we run out, the slower we start to get. Like I said, it scales with distance, so the farther you are from that radius that you define, the stronger the pull is going to be, despite the velocity still being set to 1. Now if we set that to 2, you'll notice a very significant difference. We're being pulled much faster, and once we start getting towards the outer ring of that 10 that we defined in the players in radius, you'll notice that we're really actually not going anywhere anymore. That's because at 10 is roughly about the strongest spike of the velocity. However, it can change depending on the distance. I think it changes most based on like intervals of like maybe 20, 30. But as you can see, though, velocity to the radius of 10, once you hit 10, that's when the pull is the strongest, which means you're pretty much not going to be able to get away once you hit the outer ring. Now, if you set it to 1.5 and reload, it's still going to be a strong pull, but this one will be more escapable. It'll just take a while. That's like excluding movement-based bonuses. I don't have any movement speed items, potions, anything of the sort. So that 1.5 is pretty much the strongest pull you can get away from if you're being not super specific, like 1.67 or something like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and carry on with the next part of this. I'm going to go ahead and delete this to get this out of the way. And next we're going to go ahead and utilize the inline YAML format. The reason for this, well, you'll see in just a moment. So go ahead and comment this out. We're going to start up a new skill here, projectile. Okay, now that we have that, let's go ahead and start doing our very fancy stuff. So on tick equals, make sure to use that left bracket, left square bracket, 2 more spaces, and now we can start throwing everything in again. So we're gonna do our effect first. So effect particles, P equals cloud, HS equals 0.2, VS equals 0.2. We need to make sure we actually type this out correctly. There we go. We're not going to worry about speed on it. I don't think it's going to be matter too much. We're going to do A equals 10 at origin. Okay, so that's going to be following the projectile. If any of you have played with this mechanic, you know well aware how that works. But now we get to the fun part. We're going to go ahead and copy pull here. Okay. So this is where we're going to utilize the next option, which is 2, or to origin. And we're going to set that to true. Now, to origin is going to basically do what this does, except we're going to use a different targeter here, so that way it targets players and actually does something. But to origin means it's going to go to wherever the projectile is, which is very, very useful for what we are working on now. So now that we have 2 equals true with the pull mechanic, we actually need to change the targeter to at players near origin. We're not going to use players in radius because players in radius still refers to the mob that shot the projectile, whereas players near origin refers to all players near where the projectile currently is. So very important to keep in mind. We're going to do R equals 3. Okay. We're going to go ahead and left bracket. Make sure to put that semicolon in there. We're going to do a few things here too. We're going to do stop at entity equals false. Let me change that equals false because we don't want it to stop when it hits a player, otherwise it ruins the skill. Let's see, hit non-players equals false. Let's see what else. Interval equals 1. That's very important to keep in mind. I think by default it's set to 4, which is still pretty close, but 1 is just way more fluid. And then max range equals, we'll do 20 for now. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and close it off, and then at target, and we'll do on a timer of 200, which, if you know, is every 10 seconds. Okay, so let's reload. Let's give him a minute to think about it. There we go. That was a really weak, really weak pull. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to up the velocity here. And we're also going to do a little bit of a thing. I think it's vertical offset equals 0. We'll do 0.25. There we go. Okay, so we reload now. And theoretically, you should shoot the next one slightly up from us. Yep, there we go. So as you can see, it's kind of weak. You might actually need to up the velocity here, or you might even need to up the origin radius. We're going to do a little bit of both. This takes a lot of playing around with to get the effect that you want. That's one thing to keep in mind, so don't feel discouraged if you don't get it right the first time. As you can see that I very clearly did not get it right the first time. But now, look at that. You see that? We're getting pulled away. I would recommend changing the radius to be lower so that way that pull is much stronger. Because if you remember from earlier, that pull got stronger the further away we were, but it went to the ring. Now that we have that radius really small, let's go ahead and change velocity here to like 10. Something crazy like that. Okay, any second now, he's gonna shoot another projectile at us. And there we go. That's basically just carrying us away. We are trapped in there. Again, this is something that you can play around with until you get it right, so don't feel discouraged if you do not get it right the first time. There are many, many attempts that you can do. Also, I'd actually recommend changing this back down to like 0.1. Okay, but anyway, we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. And we are now done with the pull mechanic. Next, we're going to work on the push mechanic. Now, this one is a lot less complicated because it utilizes some of the same stuff. However, there's no origin-based things that you have to worry about like pull has. Push is basically just velocity and velocity Y. There we go. This is literally all push is. You can still utilize it on tick the same way this works. Like if you wanted to like shove players to the side or something as opposed to pulling them away, you can do that. However, you don't really, you know, that's up to you. It just kind of depends on what you come up with. So now, let's go ahead and do this. We're gonna set our velocity to, by default, it's set to 15 because push actually utilizes a much weaker velocity than pull does. And I think velocity Y is set to 5. So if we do that right now and reload. So I just realized, even though I said at the very end of the, or beginning of the video, I said it was literally called throw, not push. And yet here I am still typing throw anyway. So as you can see, now we are just getting whoosh, thrown way far away. And this will scale based on your Y radius, or your Y coordinate too. So if you're jumping at this mob, bam, you're going to get thrown away really far, as opposed to if you're just on the ground running. Okay, so now we know we're not going to get anywhere near him. If you want to switch this, you can. It's highly recommended that you keep VY up a little bit at least, because this is setting it to 10. You can see it's kind of, it's maybe taking us like a slab's height off the ground. It's not super high, you know, and that's not a bad thing. 2 might actually be good if you want it to be more of a standard push as opposed to like a throw. However, if you want it to be more of a throw, you just need to up the Y value on the velocity here. And then you can change this to really, 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 really chuck people out. So if I set that to like 30, we should, yeah, we get sent flying. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you all something I use on literally every boss that I make ever. Spoiler, this is part of what you guys pay for whenever you support me, whenever I throw these bosses at you guys. So, let's go ahead and turn this back around here. And we're going to do on damaged. Okay, and then I think that I set it to like equals 50%. No, that's a health-based thing. Undamaged. We're just gonna set it to 0.25. Okay. So now, see how I just got thrown while damaging the mob? Yeah. So there's the secret to a lot of my bosses, everybody. If you wondered how I got players to get thrown back as a defense mechanism whenever fighting bosses, this is exactly what I do. I just utilize the throw mechanic with an on-damage trigger. It's very, very easy. You can make it look really, really good with particle effects and such like that. But, you know, I thought I'd share that tidbit of information with you all because I think most bosses should have some sort of reaction mechanism just to make them that much better. If you want to stick around for the next couple minutes, I'm going to make something really cool that I think you all will enjoy. So, if you want to do like some kind of gravity bomb, we're gonna utilize both the pull and the throw mechanics, both together. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna do aura. Let's see, aura name equals, we'll call it grav bomb. It doesn't really matter because we're not gonna be tinkering with it a whole lot, but that's okay. On tick equals, okay, now we're gonna utilize the pull mechanic with PIR. So bracket, or square bracket, copy, put that in there. I think that's all I'm going to worry about. I'm not going to worry about any kind of fancy particles right now. On end equals, now we're going to utilize throw. Make sure you don't copy the trigger here. We don't need it. This is just going to activate whenever the aura ends. A PIR, yep, just like that. Make sure we have these spaces in here, otherwise it won't work properly. Okay. Last, we're gonna set the interval to 1, and then the duration, we're gonna set it to 10 seconds. So that would be, no, we're gonna set it to 5 seconds. So instead of 200, it's just gonna be 100. Okay, then at self on, we'll do on interact, just so that way we know. What we can do actually is, just to make it more obvious, sound s equals entity dot generic dot explode at self. Okay, so now that we have that set, actually we're gonna do one more thing. I'm sorry everybody. So effect particles. Here I am making an entire skill right in front of your eyes, even though this was just gonna be a quick tutorial, but that's okay. Particle equals red dust. Let's do points equals 32. And since we're doing at PIR radius of 10, make sure to do y equals 0.1 so that way they're visible. They're not like merging into the ground. And then do radius equals 10. Okay, at self. Now we should be able to get a clear visual indicator of where the escape ring is, as well as a sound effect at the end, so that way we know for sure that it's working. So I didn't do the particle ring, right? And that's okay. That's because I didn't even do particle ring. Particle ring. Reload. One more time. There we go. So that's the escape radius out there. And kaboom. We didn't get away in time, so we got exploded. So I hope you all enjoyed that tutorial, as well as that little special skill at the end that I decided to throw in for you all. I think it's a fun skill to play around with, and I actually use that for one of my bosses as well. I'm not going to say which one. And, well, that's pretty much all there is to those two mechanics. Like I said, they're pretty simple. There's just a lot you can do with them. It's really up to your imagination. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. The more of you subscribe, the more of you will be able to see this on your YouTube homepage, and the more this will get recommended to other YouTubers who watch videos of this similar content. Help me help you guys. So thank you all very much for watching, and I can't wait to see what you come up with in the future.